Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. I'm your host, Margaret McSweeney, and I'm so glad you're joining all of us here in the beautiful Viking and Lochcarnew showroom in the Merchandise Mart, here with my favorite friend and co-host, Chef Jamie Larita.
It's always so great to be here with you, Margaret.
And I am so excited that you are here today. Another dear foodie friend, Chandra Ram, who is so accomplished. You're the editor-in-chief of Plate. Yes?
Yes, I am.
A multi-cookbook author. In fact, Jamie, she wrote the cookbook, of course, as we know, with Bill Kim.
I know we were talking about that a little earlier, but I didn't want to talk too much about it.
Yes.
Because I was going to ask you about that experience, but go ahead.
Yes. And then also her latest cookbook is about Indian Instapot cooking, and we're going to learn all of the great things about that. Welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me.
You're welcome. Can you pass that book over to me,
Yes,
Margaret?
absolutely. Some wonderful recipes. And the Instapot, why is this such the craze?
I think it's something that it took off a couple of years ago, and I think they do most of their sales through Amazon.
Right.
And there's such a tremendous word of mouth, but it's something that makes people feel comfortable cooking. And I've even seen, last night I was looking through the Instant Pot Facebook group, and there was a woman who showed her kitchen, and she had 3 Instant Pots lined up and was just cooking all kinds of different things in them. And I just thought it was amazing.
How much does an Instant Pot cost?
You know, it depends. There are different sizes, the 3-quart, the 6-quart, the 8-quart, and then there's different models with each. But especially when there's good sales going on, you can get one for, say, $60.
And you were telling me before that you can get like gravel hard chickpeas and have hummus in like 45 minutes.
Yes.
How does that happen?
It's amazing. And this was the thing for me that really drew me to it, because I live in Chicago. I live in an apartment. I don't want or need excess, gadgets and things like that. But then friends of mine were telling me, like, look, you throw pork shoulder in there, and an hour later, you've got pulled pork sandwiches. You do this, you do
That's
this.
crazy.
It sounds like a magic pot.
It's the chickpea thing for me, because I love hummus.
Who doesn't?
I love beautiful Middle Eastern, Mediterranean cooking, and I've always made it out of canned chickpeas, because I just
Who's got the time?
I don't have the time.
Who's got the time?
I gotta run a magazine, I gotta write books, I've gotta, do the laundry.
She's got a lot on her plate.
And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, you really can do all of these things. And then it started to click in with me that this was perfect for Indian food, because in India, everybody uses a pressure cooker, but they use the stovetop pressure cooker, which is kind of terrifying if you're not used to it.
It sure is. It's a time bomb.
It's a time bomb. And the recipes are crazy, because you read it and it says, okay, well, wait for 3 whistles and then do this. And
Margaret. Margaret, have you ever? No. Margaret's definitely one to start using an Instant Pot.
Yes.
I can't see you using the stovetop.
No, I would cause an explosion, I think.
And for me, so my father was Indian. He was born and raised in a very small town on the southeast coast of India called Vizag. It's in the state of Andhra Pradesh. But my mother's Irish. My mother,
what a fun combination.
Met in London.
Oh, she's the perfect chef.
Yeah.
She loves to eat and drink.
Oh yeah.
That is a perfect pairing.
We have good times.
This is a good time right here, kids.
So my mother didn't grow up with a pressure cooker, and so she, is a wonderful cook and started cooking all this Indian food, but she was just like, I didn't grow up with this. I'm not comfortable with it, so I didn't grow up with one myself. And with the Instant Pot, you really do. You kind of throw the food in there, go out for a run, go run errands, go do, live your life, and then come back, and nothing has exploded. There's no anything on your ceiling or any of that.
You can take a nap.
You can take a nap.
Love this. I love
So
this.
is it like a crock pot? I have not seen an Instant Pot yet. How does this work?
It looks like a little, I honestly don't think we have a photo of it anywhere.
We're going to put one on here.
I mean, it does look like a crock pot.
Okay.
And, but you can slow cook with it.
Okay.
I mostly use it for pressure cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taking that 6-8 hour braise and turning it into a 20-minute braise. You can use it as a rice cooker. You can use it as a yogurt maker. So you can you can saute in it. So if you're used to cooking with a slow cooker, but you have to saute everything first.
I'm telling you, I got to say, Chandra, the food, the photography number one in this book makes me want to cook.
Well, like I said, that is Huge Galdonis was the photographer for this book, and he is just amazing.
Every single one of these dishes in here. Is every recipe from the Instapot?
Every single recipe.
Every single recipe.
So sometimes it's, how to do, like there's a whole section on making raitas, which is the Indian yogurt sauce. And that's something that's like, okay, you take your base of the yogurt that you can make in your Instant Pot, and then here are the seasonings that you add in. Here's something if you want to add like a beet puree to it and turn it into this big, vibrant pink color and that. So,
and how do you make yogurt in an Instapot?
You press the yogurt button and like
I love this.
So for me, I grew up kind of 1 foot in America, 1 foot in India, and my brothers, I have 3 brothers, and so my parents would pack all of us up.
Are you the youngest?
I'm the third of 4.
Okay.
And they would pack us up and we would go to India every other year.
How amazing.
Wow.
What part of India?
So the southeast. We would actually fly, here's what we would do. We would fly from my hometown in Kentucky to Charlotte, North Carolina. Then we would fly to New York, LaGuardia. Then we would take a shuttle to Kennedy Airport. Then we would wait 12 hours. Then we would catch a plane to Germany. And then we would go to India.
It's exhausting.
So I have no idea how they did that in the 70s.
Yeah, right.
In
with 4 kids.
4 kids and all of that. So we would do that every other year. But it was just this thing of like, being around all the Indian families, in our hometown, they were 100% Indian and we were sort of like half. And so I always sort of felt like I wanted to be better at Indian cooking and I wanted it to feel as comfortable as I felt like it should. But I didn't necessarily feel like the connection was as strong. And then when I got the Instant Pot, I was like, okay, I'm going to start making more Indian food.
That's amazing.
And you can make preserved lemons.
Is there a lemon button?
Yeah, there should be a lemon button because it is that good.
On your new Instapot that we're going to create.
Yes.
On the special one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Preserved lemon button. They'll have all the buttons, all the bells and whistles
all
and buttons.
The buttons.
So do you feel like is your forte Indian?
I do love those flavors.
Yeah, so do I.
And there's something to me of the smell when curry leaves hit.
That's so true.
Simmering ghee. It's just incredible. And it's a very, it's a very personal thing for me that so much of this reminds me of being a kid and those trips to India.
Right.
And, I love that I was able to recreate the lime pickle that my father used to eat all the time. When I was
in the book?
It's in the book.
A lime pickle.
Right. So it's spicy and it's tangy and all of those things. But when I was a kid, I was always terrified of it because it was like, oh God, there's chilies in this. This is going to be too hot. Because South Indian families, the food is it's like the South anywhere. The food is spicier, right? But now I'm like, oh, I've got some leftover rice. I've got something, just chop it up, throw it in there. And
is she making you hungry?
I am so hungry, and these recipes look great too.
Yeah, no, I want Indian food. I'm going to make Indian food. It's not going to be nearly as good. But I had have you ever been to Vancouver?
I have heard the Indian food there is incredible. I've never been.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I toured with Sarah McLachlan, and her ex-husband is Indian, and there's a restaurant called Vidges in Vancouver.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And some of the recipes from my book, Plenty, were inspired by that restaurant. But I basically tried to learn how to cook Indian food because of that relationship that I had. And that's when I fell in love with all of the different spices and the curries and just the flavor, just the smell of Indian food.
It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite cuisines. So I'm looking at the photographs in here, and if the recipes are as good as the photographs, I'm in. Now I just have to get an Instapot and make it all less time.
Right.
And you just press the button. This is what I'm liking about it.
You just, I mean, and there, it's, you know, you do have to, like, you have to wait as the machine heats up, it creates pressure in there, and that's how it winds up cooking things faster, but
Chandra, do you realize that Margaret McSweeney sitting over here thinks that this is some kind of magic pot that you're talking about, that we're talking about? Okay. That she's going to just press buttons and Indian food just going to come out of it.
Indian food, okay.
All right,
so a little work.
One or two other steps, but just one or two.
But you make it easy in this, so.
You know, I tried to, part of why I wanted to do this book was to really, you know, tag on to the fact that so many people feel like cooking has been demystified with the Instant Pot. So why not make Indian food that way? You know, because so much of it is dependent upon pressure cooking anyways.
Yes.
But also, there are so many people who are really interested in Indian food, and they feel like it's easier because they have the Instant Pot.
Right. So you got me here. So basically, I'm in. I'm all in. We're sold. So tell us about. So I was thinking about you as a little girl.
Okay.
And tell me, like, with the combination of your parents, what was your first food inspiration? Like, what was the first thing that you made that made you feel like you wanted to be in this business?
You know,
do you have that taste memory?
I do, and it's not necessarily Indian food because I actually didn't really like Indian food when I was growing up.
See?
This is the true, this is like the real life story part of this.
Gold. I just got the golden nugget.
Because my red-haired, blue-eyed, ivory-skinned Irish mother has the spiciest
Sounds like a song.
It's like a country song.
It's a country song.
She has the spiciest palate of anyone I've ever known.
Really?
Amazing.
And so she made Indian food so spicy that to me it was just like this bomb, right? And like I said, we'd go to India and my aunts would they would spoon yogurt and raita on everything. They would put sugar on it. They would do whatever they could to get me to eat it. And so I kind of understand when people say, oh, I'm a little afraid of the chilies and the spices because I used to feel that way. But my mother is an amazing cook. And so we used to go all out on desserts and things like that. And she was also just, you know, I remember it was like the late 70s and we lived in a small town in Kentucky. And she said, okay, well, I bought a wok and we're having a dinner party tomorrow night. So let's learn how to use this wok. And so we would cook those things together. We would just make all kinds of little, you know, cookies and pastries and, you know, European desserts and things like that. And it was funny visiting my mom last week. I was thinking about the fact that when I was growing up, the most exotic meal was a soup and sandwich because we never got that. She was always like, oh no, I have this Spanish ham dish. And we're like, okay.
Wow. So do you feel, because I'd love to know more about your culinary journey and how you got to plate and becoming a cookbook author. So it kind of sounds like it began in your childhood kitchen.
Definitely.
And then could you take us on that journey after and how you ended up in Chicago and in the culinary field?
Yeah, there were two things that I guess three things. I loved books, I loved magazines, and I loved cooking. And I never really saw exactly how all of that came together. And so my career path kind of sounds like it was like a little bit more planned than it was. I mean, a certain amount of it is just you work hard and you get lucky because you worked hard, right?
Sure, yeah.
But it's, so I was always very interested in that, and I studied journalism in college. And went to school. I moved to Chicago to go to school here at Loyola. But I started working in restaurants. And I just loved working in restaurants. I worked at Carlucci, the restaurant on Halstead Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I still have close friends from when I worked there. And we were working this incredibly busy restaurant every night. And we would make little deals like, okay, I got to see Harrison Ford last week, so you get Paul Newman this week. And Oprah Winfrey's back in her, waiting in her car and all of this. But we would just I just loved the excitement of that. And I loved all the energy that you see in restaurants.
Yep.
And so I was studying journalism and doing that. And then I was like, God, I really want to get into the kitchen side. I really want to cook and do more of that. And so after finishing my degree at Loyola and studying journalism, I went to culinary school. And so I went to the CIA, Culinary Institute of America.
You did too.
In Hyde Park.
Got it.
And so, and we went back in the day when it was all very old school French cooking, and you learned your mother sauces.
Absolutely.
And you learned the most traditional preparations.
Yes.
And you took a quick spin through, one day, okay, today we're going to learn South American cooking for one day, and that's it.
And at night you went to Augie's.
Yeah. Now he's talking about the bars that we went to. We're not going to talk about.
Oh, that's important too, right?
But then we went to Dutch Cabin.
That's right. He did a lot of that.
Right.
Very stressful. You
It
needed to de-stress. The culinary can make you have a cocktail.
Or 5.
Or 6.
Yes.
So no, it didn't sound very stress-free in the kitchen.
No, I think it just sort of never is, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. You don't, you have to focus.
It's a pressure cooker.
Not an Instapot.
I had to bring it back to Instapot.
I had to do that, yes.
So I wound up moving back to Chicago after culinary school, and I worked as a consultant chef for a bit, and then I did restaurant marketing and PR.
You worked at some great restaurants.
Yes.
So you worked in Blackbird?
I did my internship at Blackbird,
Right.
and it was right after the restaurant opened.
Wow.
And it was before it had even been reviewed.
Wow.
So no one really knew what this was.
Yeah, but that's a good part.
And
That's a-
Donnie
Big
Medea.
deal chef in the city and then in the country was coming in.
Yeah, but think about the energy at that point.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
When it was
Right.
just, okay, we're doing all of this and we're struggling and
You were part of the growth.
we're trying to, and it was 6 months at the beginning. I don't like to overstate it or anything, but it was really fantastic. And, all of the partners were working together, and, one of the partners, Ricky, his mother would come in and roll chocolate truffles with me in the basement. We were getting ready for pastry service.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
She'd bring us egg salad sandwiches.
I had
and it
egg
was
salad
just like this
sandwich
very
today.
homey thing.
Margaret brings me egg salad sandwiches.
And then, and then I left, and it became the biggest restaurant in the city.
Yes.
That's all you needed to do. See, buy the book. You too will become a very famous restaurant if you cook in an Instapot.
If you do this.
And follow your recipes. Tell us about, go ahead, Margaret.
Yes, I'd love to hear about plate.
Yeah, that's
by
what I was
way
gonna
of
say.
background, we met through IACP. Yes.
Margaret and I met through IACP, and then she was so gracious because we were both flying to the conference in Louisville a couple of years ago, and we were on like a 6:30 a.m. flight together. And she comes in onto the plane looking perfect, as she always does. And I rolled in exactly the way I look at 6:30 in the morning, whether I'm in an airport or at home or whatever.
I think Margaret goes to sleep like this.
I think she does.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think so.
clutching a coffee like it was my job. And she was like, oh my gosh, because we had met before. And so we had the best time just kind of chatting and everything like that.
Yes.
So I was, I started doing some freelance food writing. And Nancy Ross Ryan was the founding food editor at Plate. And she called me and said, hey, we're starting this magazine and I need someone who's an expert on fish sauce. And I heard you are. And I said, absolutely I am. Let's talk tomorrow and do this interview. And then I frantically did all kinds of research on fish sauce because I wasn't an expert, but I was like, I see an opportunity when it's in front of me.
Exactly. Of course, I love fish sauce.
I was just cooking with it. So, and then she asked me to develop a recipe for the first issue. And then after that said, can you write for us? You have a journalism background and a culinary background, and can you write? And so I wrote for the magazine for a few years. And then one day the editorial director, Bill McDowell, called me and said, can we have lunch? And I was like, oh God, what's happening? And then he said, hey, Nancy's going to retire and we think you should be the editor. And I was like, okay, done. So
God's trains run on time.
This will be 13 years.
Wow.
That's
crazy. That's a long time.
But it's wonderful.
Yeah, of course it is. That's why you're still here.
I mean, we love doing the publication, and what we do is pick a separate theme for each issue. And so we had an issue all about Peru and Peruvian food and drinks and, what to do with pisco and how to pair it. And then now we've got an issue about pairing wine and food and, so it's like you get to do this deep dive into a different cuisine or a style of cooking with each issue. So,
and you're traveling constantly to all these great destinations.
I kind of want this job. I can't write.
Okay, well, you can sit in my meetings and tell me if you spoke it.
I'll do it.
Okay.
It's happening.
Okay. Job switch.
Well, okay. Well, would you like to work in the Viking showroom here? In the Viking Locker Room showroom? What do you think about showroom?
I think it's pretty fantastic.
Okay.
I have serious kitchen envy every time I come in here.
Do you?
My
Appliance
husband doesn't necessarily love it when I'm like,
a lot of husbands don't like when
we visit
because they wind up buying new appliances. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
It's for the greater good.
It is. So, Plate 13 Years, the new cookbook.
Yes.
What's going on with the cookbook? Are you going on a cookbook tour?
You know, what I'm doing is just what's great is, you know, as Margaret said, I already travel a lot. So I'll sort of say, like, oh, if I have to be in San Francisco on Monday, I'm going to fly in on Sunday and do an event or something like that. So
you're taking advantage of the travel.
Taking advantage of the travel, doing some things in Chicago, which is a fantastic market to be in, and, you know, just trying to keep up with so much of it is social media. So, you know, that's a really big part of it.
It is. Now, have people been posting their recipes from your book on Instagram?
Which I love.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Do you get a lot of people talking about, like, do you get all the questions?
I get the questions.
Right. So
I get the questions.
My Instapot's not.
Right. Well, so many people, it's great. So many people got an Instant Pot for Christmas or Hanukkah or just at the end of the year, Black Friday sales. And then usually people get an Instant Pot and it takes them about a month to stare at it before they'll decide to cook with it. And then so very fortunately, happily for me, a lot of people got my book as well.
With the Instant
Pot, you know, if they got it as a gift or something like that. And then they're like, okay, so what do I do? So I do get those questions of just how do I do this?
I'm pushing the yogurt button.
Right.
And no, yogurt's not coming out.
I keep looking and...
So a lot of people you must get all the emails with, you know, I can't have this, but I'd like to try that.
Right, right. And one thing I thought was fantastic was my editor, Meredith Dees, really said, like, let's make sure that we indicate which recipes are gluten-free, or dairy-free, or vegetarian, vegan, so people knew, so that it was easy for people to understand.
Yeah, we know Meredith.
And Meredith, I love Meredith. Yes. So you've met her, yes. So shout out to Meredith. She is so wonderful. And also the Les Dames. We need to acknowledge Les Dames Escoffier and say yes.
Margaret and I are members of Les Dames Escoffier. I remember we did that wonderful group photo of all of us. What was that during?
When Barbara was here,
Barbara Lazaroff was here
yeah.
and Carla Hall came.
Is that where you whacked the champagne, Margaret?
No, I savored the champagne. I did
at the wonderful job.
with the broken shoulder. So your mom, yes,
so,
you can do
things.
Be careful.
These two throw some serious parties.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think we're going to have one of the parties featuring.
I would love for you to come into the showroom and cook with us.
Oh, I would love that.
That would be really fun.
And we could do a Facebook Live.
Yeah, we could.
Could we do that?
Sure.
Oh, how fun!
Yeah, we should.
Yes.
I'll let her do all the cooking.
Oh,
that'll be great.
You can be the taster.
I'll push the buttons.
You'll push the buttons.
That'll be good. Well, Chandra, I'd always like to end Kitchen Chat with 3 tips for the home chef.
Okay.
So what would you recommend? With the Instapot or just without?
Let me see. I think the first one is to feel free to, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. So really,
that's a good one.
You know, to try and experiment with something new, whether it's a new spice or, you know, a dish that you've always thought about. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good tip. Because so many times people are creatures of habit. I love being in the supermarket and look what's inside people's looking. I'm a shopping voyeur. I am. And I'll look and I'll see, you know, what's in their shopping cart. That's actually a TV show, I think, a concept. And I'll wonder if they buy the same things all the time because they just know, like, they're like creatures of habit, right? What if you just threw something wild into your shopping cart, like a dragon fruit? So,
right.
You know?
Right. Like, what if this would be, here's the show. You follow them, and then you sneak the dragon fruit into the cart.
Right.
And then they have to cook something with it.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
That's my show.
Like
That's our show.
Okay, that's your show.
Yep, we got it. It's called something.
It's like a stalker.
But then Margaret and I will be there to taste what they eat, what they make with the dragon fruit.
Guys, I'm not kidding. I think this is a great show.
I think it's a good show. I really am like, okay.
Right, this is good work.
Because what I love doing when I travel, I love going to grocery stores and seeing what's available.
Right.
And so we were talking before about Bill Kim's cookbook, Korean Barbecue.
Yes. What a great book.
Which
you did such a great job on that book.
Well, I mean, that's Bill's book and working in tandem with him, and he's just the most amazing human being and chef.
He is.
But what I loved was going home to visit my mother in Kentucky and going to the Kroger and seeing all the ingredients were available.
Wow.
So that's what I like doing. I like seeing what's in. So,
I think there's another idea brewing here.
Okay.
Where you could take a chef's cookbook and go into those markets,
right,
and then challenge the person. Like, here's Bill Kim's cookbook. Here are all the ingredients. Make the recipe.
Or challenge Bill Kim to do it, because he can sort of look at it and say, you know, I've seen him, I've cooked with him where he was like, wait, I need salt for this, and instead of using just salt, he used soy sauce.
Right.
He's like, that's my salt, and it has all these other flavors.
Right.
So I think my second tip is watch what chefs do and do what they do.
I love the way you just segued right into the second tip. That was smooth. That was so smooth.
Well, if we're going to launch all these TV shows.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I mean, yes, you know about that.
But I think that it's so interesting to really read a cookbook and read the introduction. Because that's where they start telling you all the little things that they like to do.
I think especially these days, when, you know, cookbooks of the past, you can kind of maybe get away with more. You know, these days, I think cookbooks, I think there are a lot more people using cookbooks these days than ever before. Do you agree with that?
I do. Cookbook sales are up we're up 25% last year.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So I'm right.
Yes.
You're right. Which you always enjoy hearing.
Yes, because I'm always wrong.
And I think the cookbook readers are really trying to expand their palate and their techniques, and this is great.
Between the Food Network and Plate and all these other Instagram, you know, a lot of people are being inspired by photographs and by Instagram and by other chefs and all of these. You know, no longer do we have like just a few chefs out there that like, remember back in the day when it was like Rachel Ray and, you know, Bobby Flay and just like
it was sort of 5 chefs.
Yeah, right. In the group. Now there's hundreds of chefs out there and hundreds of recipes floating around. They have to be right and they have to be good in order for them to gain energy and frequency. You know, in order to be a food star today, I think you really got to have some serious game.
I absolutely agree.
You know?
I think you have to, and you have to back it up. Like you say, your recipes have to work.
Yeah, they have to work. Because online, if your recipe sucks, guess what? Sorry, I said sucks. I'm just I can do that. On the salty side. I mean, right away on social media, like, hey, I'm on page whatever, and your lamb meatballs aren't really that great.
They'll be perfect.
I know. I knew it. You always go for the meatball recipe.
But you're right. I mean, you have to back it up. That's why with this book, with Bill's book, I just have regular people test recipes. After I tested them and made sure, just have somebody else do it and say, well, wait a minute, what about this? And I'm like,
and did you follow them in their grocery cart in the grocery store?
I should have sent this one over there. Follow her and be like, I'm sorry. So we watched you in the grocery store, apparently.
We're really embarrassed.
You only bought 1 lemon, and the recipe called for 2. I think we all know that.
How about you pay attention next time? So, tip number 3.
Tip number 3, I'm going to just beg everybody please sharpen your knives.
Oh, God.
Get your knives sharpened.
You know what? Me included. I know.
Too.
Nope. I'm guilty. I love a sharp knife. Don't get me wrong. I love a sharp knife. But, yeah, I sharpen my knives. I have the sharpest knives in the world.
And do you get them sharpened or do you sharpen them yourself?
I get them sharpened.
Okay.
Because I feel like I never got quite as good of an edge using the steel isn't necessarily a sharpener. It just sort of tunes the edge of it. And I had a stone, but I always felt like, all right, I need to still go in.
I'm so with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the stone, you're like working the stone, and then you get into
you're
it, and then
feeling good about it.
And then you like cut something, and it's like, wait a minute, I just spent all the time.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta leave it to the professionals. I'm with you.
So I like to take it to a knife shop, or Sur La Table will do it.
You know what I have in my neighborhood in Bucktown? I have someone that drives around in a truck.
I have that. I live in Lincoln Square, and at our farmers market on Tuesdays, there's somebody there who will sharpen your knives for you.
Wow.
But it makes such a difference. And I always think, especially like after we get through winter, you have to do it because you just spent the entire winter cutting butternut squash and carrots and all of these thick, hard vegetables.
Yeah. People come over to my house, and that's the other thing. When you have sharp knives and people aren't used to cooking, they come over to a chef's house and they use your knife, they're like, oh my God, your knives are so sharp. Yeah, it's like, I can't believe I just cut them. It's like...
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I have not sharpened my knives, and I'm about to celebrate my 28th wedding anniversary. So wedding
Margaret, what are you doing? You're like cutting with spoons.
I know. So this is the reason.
The next cookbook, Cutting with Spoons.
Cutting with Spoons.
By Margaret
I feel like that's a book of poetry.
Right?
That could be.
So deep.
Well, these are
recipes.
Yes, so great tips, and if you could hold up that beautiful cookbook. So, foodie friends, we'll have a link to this. Thank you so much, Chandra. For
it actually is a beautiful book,
Chat.
and I can't wait to try some of these recipes. I don't say that often. Have I ever said on Kitchen Chat?
No. So
I like Bill's book. Bill's book was very good, but to me, when you have great food photography, number one, and I love that it's just every dish you want to make.
Yes.
Every time I see a photo, I love the caramelization. What a great job on the photographs in this book.
Yes.
So I'm excited.
I did have
wonderful team.
one other question. What is a lassie?
Lassie is a yogurt drink.
Okay.
And so it's something that you can have. I think people are most familiar with Mango Lassies, and which I always make with canned Alphonso mango puree. Alphonso mangoes are a type of mango that you can find in India and almost nowhere in the U.S.
Wow.
And they're just sweet and incredible. And they're so sweet that I don't think you need any. You can just mix them with plain yogurt. I add a little lime juice and a little rose water.
Ooh, I like your chai lassi.
And so lassies are just a wonderful yogurt drink, and it's, and this one, actually, this is a salt lime lassi.
Interesting.
Ooh,
And
like
which you don't see, people, I think, in the U.S. aren't as familiar with, but you might see it on an Indian menu every now and again. But yogurt drinks are a great way they're cooling, they settle your stomach after you've had all this, like, spices and everything. So that's India's trick.
Love that.
I love it.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Chandra.
Thank you so much for having me.
For being on Kitchen Chat, and thank you, Jamie, and thank you, dear foodie friends, for joining us on this culinary journey. Please come visit Jamie Lorita in the Viking and La Cornue showroom in the Merchandise Mart here in Chicago, Suite 137. Check out Chandra's new cookbook. I'll make sure we have a link to that. Come visit me in my kitchen, kitchenchat.info. Check out thevikinglife.com for more inspiration and recipes for your kitchen. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.
Thanks for joining Margaret for Kitchen Chat today. Margaret would be so excited for you to drop by and visit with her at kitchenchat.info, where you'll enjoy podcasts, blogs, recipes, tips from chefs, and even great giveaways. She invites you to share your recipes and kitchen stories too. As Margaret always says, savor the day.